welcome to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Tiemann. This is the award-winning Fan Show. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. A shout out to those of you on Facebook Live where you can watch me. You can see me on Facebook Live at facebook.com/fanshowofficial. And we have got in my mind, a fantastic episode. Of course, I think that about all of them. They're like children. They only get better each one. Or you have a favorite. I don't know how it works. I don't have kids yet, or that I know of. But anyway, I did get the opportunity to spend some time with people that have plenty of kids right now. They only have 3, and they're the sweetest Midwest family ever. If you ever have a chance to stay at the bed and breakfast known as Chateau de Flores, I highly recommend it. Great food, great entertainment. And there was a little bit of noise, but I think other than that, it was a 5-star. Five star for Chateau de Flores of Des Moines, Iowa. And the first stop on the Fan Show tour went off without a hitch. It went off better than how I can get my words out right now. But that's okay, because we have a great guest tonight. I'm joined by a legend in the industry, a legend in the IFL, the Silver Fox himself, Rich Roste, will join me. We've already talked, and it was a great conversation. I usually block out 10 to 15 minutes thinking that, hopefully we can get to 10. If we need the extra 5, at least I've planned for it. We talked for almost a half hour, and I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. It was a great conversation in my mind. But he will join us later on. I have so many headlines to get through, but I did want to just take a moment to go ahead and say thank you to Antonio and Jen and Jaden and Gabe and Josie for housing me on the first official Fan Show Tour 2019 stop. Today's episode brought to you by Bang. It's not really, but I drink it when I need to. It's you may be wondering about the hat. It's snowing. Again, it's March 12th, and it's snowing in the Pacific Northwest. And I know that snow is nothing foreign in the Pacific Northwest. It's that it's March. Snow. Look at me. I'm done with you right now, okay? The snow needs to be done. I'm ready for warmer weather. I'm ready for spring activities. I get nervous when I fly in the snow. I do. I do not like flying in the snow, so that would help. And Antonio's jumping in the chat. You can jump in the chat if you'd like. Also, it's great to have you guys join me and strike up the conversation. And I did not get my hat back yet. I called the Lost and Found yesterday, because I couldn't get through Sunday while I was still in Iowa. Called them yesterday. They took down a description of the hat, like I'm describing a missing person. And they said that they would get back to me. I assume found or not, lost or found. There we go. That's what the phrase I was looking for. I haven't gotten a phone call back, so I'll probably call them again tomorrow and see. But it is what it is. Yes, I lost my 49ers stocking hat while I was there. I believe I left it up in Joe Stacy's broadcast booth, which, the irony. But it was a great first stop, and I think the Barnstormers couldn't have asked for a better start to finish than what they got from that home opener and the banner drop or raising or unveiling or whatever the hell you want to call it. But it was great to be there, be a part of that moment, because it's part of history now. Last year, winning the championship was a huge moment for their history of the franchise, and I got to see the owners, Mr. Lamberti. He was in high spirits. He was very happy about the moment, and General Manager John Pettit, he was very excited. And, yeah, the fans, they were happy. Everybody was having a good time except Green Bay. And sorry, guys, I love you, but we all have an off game, and hopefully that's all this was. So that's going to bring us to the headlines. Let's hop to it. And the headlines, boy, are there a lot of them, especially in the NFL. It is the most frantic, crazy time of the year. Free agency is up and running, path to the draft. And so now we see the shift, the shell game. Where are people going to land? And some of these landing spots really, really confuse me. But don't forget, headlines, of course, brought to you by Dynamite Enterprises, who continue to do amazing things for me in the show. I ordered one of those giant 10-foot drop-in repeats, a new backdrop for the show, with it bigger and a better stand because I wanted to have it for interviews. And it showed up, but it was beat up. It was very beat up. I was not pleased with the quality of it. Reached out to Ethan, said, hey, what's up with this? Sent him photos. He's like, that's not the norm, man. That's like an exception. That's like a 1 out of every 100 that ends up like that. So I'm sorry. And I didn't know what was going to be done about it. He reached out to him. He said, this is unacceptable. They're sending me a brand new one. So I don't know what to do. I don't know if Ethan wants this other backdrop back, but I thought, what could I do with it? I mean, I could use it for other events, or maybe I could cut it up into pieces and send a piece to every IFL team, and the players can sign it and maybe, I don't know, give it away or send it to somebody. So ideas, if that's the case. I don't know if that'll be the case, but some ideas would be much appreciated. Hey, Ty Knight, he jumped in the chat there on the live video. It was great to see him and Judd Harold. We had IFL royalty on the first stop. So anyway, Dynamite Enterprises, they're going to take care of you, okay? They make everything under the sun that you would possibly want customized, and they will make sure that you are 100% satisfied customer. This is why I do business with them exclusively, is because I know that if a product, if its quality is less than up to par, that they're going to fix it and make it right. And Ethan did that. So, dynamiteenterprises.com. Headlines. Le'Veon Bell, apparently picking between the Jets and the Ravens. Last I checked, neither one of them was really a Super Bowl contender. The Ravens limped into the postseason, and it was because the Steelers were hoping for them to lose and the Browns to win in order to get in. I mean, now that's irony right there. But there's a few other teams I would think of. Apparently he likes Baltimore, but the Jets have made the best offer, so he is torn. And we will see who wins the Bell Prize of 2019. Antonio Brown is a Raider. That's a weird pairing. I mean, that is like the wide receiver retirement home. Did he learn nothing from Jerry Rice and Randy Moss? I mean, it's just... these landing spots are so weird. Like, there are teams that would pay so much to have you. And I thought the 49ers were a good spot. They might not have been playoff contenders last year, but Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL. And they had been talked about. The Raiders just don't make any sense to me whatsoever. But who knows? I mean, maybe at this point in his career, if he doesn't want a Super Bowl, he just wants a big fatty paycheck. But he will go to the Raiders. The Raiders and the Steelers swap 5th and 6th rounders, but yet the Raiders got a first round for Amari Cooper. Yeah, let that one sink in for a minute. Let's see. And AB, remember that time that he was a Bill for like 6 hours? That was a good time. That was a good time when Antonio Brown was a member of the Buffalo Bills for all of 6 hours. God, I love this time of year. I really do. Let's see. And then Raiders, they get Joyner from the Rams. They agree to a 4-year, $42 million deal. Perryman to the Browns for a 1-year deal. Broncos and Falcons will play the Hall of Fame game. I don't know how they decide these matchups, but Broncos-Falcons, Hall of Fame game. Anthony Barr failed a physical, which it's odd. So his next stop will have to wait. Latavius Murray is going to the Saints on a 4-year deal. Davis is a former Pro Bowler. He's going to the Chargers. Suggs has signed with the Arizona Cardinals for a 1-year, $7 million deal. Funches is going to the Colts. The Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, is going to the Chiefs. Foles is getting $50 million guaranteed to go to the Jaguars. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, Fan Nation, those of you playing the home game, it's not a question anymore of if the Jaguars will ever win a Super Bowl. Now that they have Foles, it's how many Super Bowls will they win? Over-unders at 5. Your guess in the chat. And let's see. Frank Gore will go to the Bills for a 1-year, $2 million deal. Denver has opted to get to pick up Emmanuel Sanders' option. And then finally, 49ers signed former Buck Kwan Alexander to a 4-year, $50 million deal with $27 million in guaranteed, making him the highest paid linebacker in NFL history. Congratulations to Mr. Alexander. That's a huge get for the 49ers. It's no joke. Beefing up the defensive line and the backfield there. That's where games are won and lost. And speaking of fantastic defenses, wow, Iowa holding Green Bay to 3 points. That's unheard of. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I'm going to try to get through the headlines quickly as possible because the conversation I had with the Silver Fox himself from Sioux Falls was a great one. Ty Knight said it was great to see me. We need to just, Ty, if you're still watching, if you're still listening, next time you and I are in the same city at the same time, we just need to fan it up, man. We need to get crazy and just have a good time. It's every time I see you, I'm all business, and you're trying to have a good time, but there needs to be an after party because that's when I can finally cut loose, and that's a sight to be seen. Adam's checking in. He says, Bell to the Jets, get paid a ton of money to watch your career die. God, that's so bad. Like I said, these matchups don't make any sense. Antonio says Beasley to the Bills. I don't know how that one, I guess given my list here, it's easy for one to escape me, but yes, Beasley to the Bills as well. And Antonio Brown was a Bill for 6 hours. So I wonder, the Bills have got to be trying something here. They're the ones that seem to be making the most strategic moves in the offseason. Now, I'm not saying that Beasley's an Edelman, but he definitely plays that way. And Frank Gore is an ageless wonder. So I think the Bills are at least trying. Don Frost checks in. Hello, Arizona. Thank you, Don. I really enjoy having you and listening. In the AAF, I went 2 of 2, 50%, broke even, not too bad. Orlando, 5-0. We called it. Adam, if you're watching, we called it. Orlando is the team to beat in the AAF until further notice. And let's see, they beat the Iron. They did it with defense this time. 31 points they scored, but they held the Iron to 14. Fleet, they won with a walk-off field goal, 27-25. Their defense really stepped up over the Stallions, so that was a surprise. That was one of the losses, or one of the ones I did not get right. The Legends, they took it to the Express. Another walk-off field goal, 23-20 as time expired. So we had 2 walk-off field goals. Great for the kickers getting some love because what do we say around here in Fan Nation? Kickers need love too. And let's see, the Commanders get it done against the Hot Shots, 29-25. That was the other one I got right. So right now I feel like the Commanders, the Iron, and the Orlando are the top 3 teams in the league. The Fleet, I don't know, because they've got their other quarterback in, and it was really a defensive effort that got them to the win. That score is still way too close for comfort if I'm a San Diego Fleet fan. And then let's see here. In other news, we had Fastlane this weekend. Fastlane was a lot of fun. One of the better undercard pay-per-views, if you will, the one right before Mania. I don't understand the purpose of having that pay-per-view, but for what it was well worth it. Worth your money, the $10 you spend for the WWE Network. So we do now have Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's title at Mania. It is stamped, official, done, delivered, sealed. It will main event WrestleMania 35, and that probably is going to be one of the best matches you've seen. And I hope it's not one that is so overhyped that it fails to live up to the hype. I think if we take it for what it is, which is the women in the main event for the first time in history, the 3 best women in wrestling right now, in my honest opinion, who have all done terrific jobs. Ronda Rousey on the microphone, maybe not so much, but I'm willing to forgive that. I think it'll be a great match. We saw some NXT talent, but overall, a solid pay-per-view, and Shane McMahon turned on The Miz. Spoiler alert, but like you didn't see that one coming. In the music department, Blink-182, their drummer Travis Barker, one of my favorites, announced that they should have a new album before their Warped Tour appearance in Atlantic City this summer. Let's see here. And then in outdoor news, we had Jacob Wall, who competed in his first FLW, that's Fresh Lake Water Bass Tournament Tour, Seminole Lake. He finished in the top 30 out of, guess how many? 163. So Oregon's own Jacob Wall finished 26 overall. Congratulations, Jacob Wall. That's a win for the outdoors department right there. He's been on the show. He's a great kid. Very bright future for him. And then in the robotics department, it is official because of Discovery and the Science Channel have finally announced it. That is BattleBots Season 4 will happen in Long Beach. And let's see, congratulations are due to Nick Hague, Pasquale Vacchio, and Craig Peterson for getting picked up by the Atlantic City Blackjacks of the AFL. You guys play like professionals. You are now going to get paid like professionals. Congratulations, boys. And then, of course, to Fabian Guerra for getting signed by the Columbus Destroyers. So we got some talent going around. And I think it's going to be a great time for those guys to really showcase their talents. The AAF and IFL both had their first pick sixes of the season in the same weekend. That was one of the highlights from the Fleet game, and that was our number one play of the Fan Show official top 10 plays of the week. And for those of you arguing with me, let me just say that, yes, Sam Charles' catch was fantastic, but we can probably almost guarantee that we will see an over-the-dasher board catch once a week. And they'll all look fantastic because they're over the wall. But how many times in the sport of football will you see a coast-to-coast pick six as time expires? That's the question I ask you. And that is exactly why it was a tough decision, but I still sided with the Jordan Wycliffe pick six, 49-yard INT. It was a thing of beauty. I mean, he was just a jet. He was gone, juked defenders. So go and check out the Fan Show official top 10 plays of the week on the Facebook page right now. And you can also see our Fan Show official outstanding players of the week, offensive, defensive, and special teams. Special teams goes to Miles Bergner, who was perfect. Perfection again in the kicking department. Kickers need love too. Moment of the week were for that 54-yard beaut. Bangarang! That was it. Made my top 10 senses tingle on that one. And then we had Jordan Wycliffe, who had a phenomenal job. He had 5 tackles. He had 2 forced fumbles, which I didn't even realize until I looked at the stats. And then that 1 interception that he returned for a touchdown to hold Green Bay to 3 points. That defense was great. The offense was great. Daquan Neal, our first Fan Show player of the game from the Fan Show Tour 2019. He had a great game. 4 touchdowns, 4 receivers, no interceptions, otherwise perfect passer rating. And then your outstanding offensive player of the week, Matt Barrett. Some of you might remember him. It's been a while, but he was on fire for the Sugar Skulls in their big debut at home. Over 5,100 fans packed that place, and he did not disappoint as he threw 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's ridiculous. Matt Barrett, your outstanding offensive player of the week. And let's see. Okay, so that brings us to the IFL Week 3 recap. So Iowa gets the banner raised. They get a big, impressive win over Green Bay. And I'm just going to chalk it up to Green Bay just had an off week because that performance, that's the lowest they've ever scored in their franchise history. Previous was 17. Chuck Miller informed me of this. I was like, that's crazy. Fans that had made it down from Green Bay said that they'd never seen anything like it. So I think it was just an off week that Iowa was fortunate enough to capitalize on, but Iowa's still a fantastic team. They really are. Offensively, they've got weapons. Sam Charles, Ryan Ballantyne, Connor Hollenbeck, Daquan Neal. I mean, the list goes on, and they showed what they're made of. So props to them. Great home opener, great occasion. Everything I felt was just very impressive from Iowa. And then we also had the San Diego Strike Force and the Cedar Rapids River Kings, a game of somebody's got to win, and it was the River Kings, 65-48. This one had a top 10 moment in it. Markel Wade juking out the whole defense. That's a beautiful play. If you guys haven't seen the top 10 yet, please go watch because it is awesome. And then the Sioux Falls Storm come back from their first bye week, 55 over the Danger, 36. And there was a couple of great plays from this one, including a blocked field goal for a touchdown by Claude Davis of the Storm. So Sioux Falls 2-0, Danger fall to 1-2. San Diego drops to 0-3, but Cedar Rapids is now 1-2. Green Bay falls to 1-2. Iowa is now 2-0. And then the last one, the Bismarck Bucks against the Tucson Sugar Skulls, 42-65 or 62 was your final, and Bismarck drops to 0-2, while Tucson 2-0. They're one of only a handful of undefeated teams left. How crazy is that? Arizona, Iowa, Sioux Falls, and Tucson. Who would have thought? Not me. Your comments, if you guys want to go ahead, well, we've got about 5 minutes here. We can have a little bit of a discussion. I'm excited for BattleBots. I'm excited for Week 3 of the IFL. I'm excited for Week 6 of the AAF. I mean, there's just a lot of really great stuff going on. And I say this because my conversation with Rich Roste is we don't really talk a whole lot about football, but we do find out a lot about his history coming up in sportscasting and what it's like to be celebrating 40 years in the broadcast booth. Hell of an accomplishment. Props to you, Mr. Roste. But yes, well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit here. I haven't seen anything from Adam yet. Let's take a quick look back other than his comment about Le'Veon Bell and the Jets. Hey, Luke. Luke has joined the chat on Facebook Live, as well as Jason. Hey, guys. How's it going? And yes, one more big thank you to Antonio and Jen Flores for housing me. And yes, their dogs, Tank and his dog Tank is something, but his baby Gabe, who's crawling and walking, very entertaining. I came up with what I feel is a genius $1 million idea. They need to have where you can quickly install, just like you know how you can hang things up now with the hooks and the adhesive that you take it, and if you need to remove it, you just pull the thing and it pops off. But if you stick it, it sticks really well. So they need to have that, but it's probably like a 5x5 square, and you stick it to a wall. It comes in a set of 4, so you can stick it to either the 4 walls like in your living room or playroom area, or a different wall in each room of your home. And what it is it's just a little clip for a bungee type thing, not a violent bungee, but a bungee for a toddler that you hook them to this, and if you're sitting on the couch or in a recliner doing something, they can get right up to you, and then it slowly pulls them back. It's not harmful. It'd just be funny just to watch it. So that's my $1 million idea, I think, right there. Luke asks if we're moving to Florida soon. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. Yes, and Joni. Antonio says, don't forget Joni. But it was a great weekend, and we had a fun time at Buzzard Billy's. Ronnie has his own belt now, and it was good to see him. It was great to catch up with Joe Stacy, of course, see all the familiar faces. And I just want to quickly apologize to those of you that listen to the show and follow me, that if I come to your city and we don't get a chance to really catch up, it's really nothing against you. Like I get pulled a million different directions, and I'm usually 9 times out of 10 a one-man show. And it is not that I don't feel that you're important to me by any means. It's just simply that there was so much other stuff going on that I meant to say hi, or I meant to talk and sit down and catch up with you, and it just didn't happen. I didn't even get to say goodbye to Mitch before they headed back to Green Bay, but I was doing the player and coach interviews after the game, and that's normally a good time to catch up with everybody. But when I'm solo, it's harder to do. It really is. But just make sure you hit me up and say, hey, don't be an ass. No, I'll do my best next time. And let's see here. Don says, Sugar Skulls have been decent. Let's see. Play on offense between run and pass. I think might run into something tough against the Rattlers. And see, that's going to be the matchup that everybody is intrigued by, because I think the Sugar Skulls are a very well-run franchise. As I mentioned last week, you look at San Diego and Tucson, 2 expansion teams entering the same league the same year, going very different directions. Tucson had fans lined up outside before kickoff waiting to get in and then to buy merch. 5,100 fans in that first game, and that's just a prop. That's props to their marketing team, to their ownership, to everybody putting the right people in the right places. And San Diego, not the case. Just not the case. So I think from a franchise standpoint, Tucson's going to be here for a while. San Diego might be one and done. But it's unfortunate because I feel like San Diego has some real competitors on there. They play 4 quarters of football. They just don't come out on the winning side of things. Tucson, though, man, they look really good. But they have played what I would consider, as of right now, according to my own power rankings, the 2 worst teams in the league. So we'll see what happens, yes, when they play a team like the Rattlers, to Don's point. So that is going to do it for the opening segment of the Fan Show. Thank all of you for tuning in on Facebook Live. Go ahead and click that link right there. Go to Spreaker.com/user/The Fan Show. If you can't listen live, you can download and subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook. But Instagram is The Fan Show, and Twitter is @Fan Show Official. Because guess what? It's not official unless it is Fan Show Official. Here is my conversation with the Silver Fox, the voice of the Sioux Falls Storm, Rich Roste. Enjoy, folks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me now, the man known as the Silver Fox. He is the voice of the Sioux Falls Storm, Rich Roste. Mr. Roste, it is an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
I don't know much of an honor it is, but I'm pleased to be on your show, Richard, and great talking to you.
Yeah, it's this is your first time on the show. I got to say, long overdue. I have admired from afar because legends such as yourself, and I don't use that word lightly, I go to school for sportscasting at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, and I got to say, it is a very unique craft. It's something that takes a special sort of dictionary, dedication, and just overall professionalism. And I think that you, as the voice of the Sioux Falls Storm, has been a real treat. And they're a bit spoiled to have you there up in Sioux Falls, just like I tell the Barnstormers with Joe Stacy.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. I'm honored that you would think that. This has been a tremendous hobby for me. A lot of people don't realize it, but I'm not a sportscaster by profession. I'm a funeral director by profession, and wow. I owned my own funeral homes in Iowa for over 25 years. But sportscasting became a hobby by accident. Actually, what had happened is that when you live in a small town, you go downtown for coffee and you join the other business people and things like that. I got to meet the radio guy, and he found out that I'd played college football, and he said, "Say, we have a game coming up on Friday night. Would you like to do stats for me?" And I said, "Sure, that'd be great." Well, the next week I came back to do stats, and he said, "Well, my color guy didn't show up, so could you do color for the broadcast?" And I said, "Sure." So I jumped in and did color. And by the end of the year, he had been promoted up into the station. So after the season was over, they asked me if I would continue and do some basketball for them. And so I said, yes, I would, because I could get a night off and cover basketball. And my problem was, the first game I covered was Iowa girls basketball. And this is something you probably have no idea about, in the fact that years ago they used to play 3-on-3 basketball.
Oh, wow.
3-on-3, 3 guards, 3 forwards, and the other end of the court, 3 guards and 3 forwards. And they did not cross the center line. And I had never seen that before growing up in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And so I'm supposed to be announcing this game, and much less trying to get the names out. I was saying things like, well, I don't understand why she doesn't pass, why she has to pass every time she dribbles twice she passes. I found out that's a rule. You could only dribble twice, and you had to pass. You could not advance the ball across the center court. You could not do certain things, and you also got 6 fouls. And I kept talking about this gal had 5 fouls. I couldn't understand why she was still in the game. So that was my introduction into broadcasting. I was doing 6 girl basketball in Iowa, and was basically, they called it 3-on-3. Used to be a tremendously popular sport. They used to, sell out the big auditorium down in Des Moines, Iowa. They'd have 14,000 people at that girls basketball. And Iowa and Oklahoma were the last two states to have 3-on-3 girls basketball.
Wow. That is a crazy story, just how everything has come about. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around the funeral director and play-by-play sportscaster. Now, I feel like there's probably a few jokes in there somewhere, but all jokes aside, I mean, you are celebrating life at one, I imagine, and
yes.
on the field, up in the broadcast booth, you are celebrating the plays on the field. So maybe not too difficult of a transition, but I feel like the tone in which you do each one. Have you ever gotten them mixed up before?
No,
okay.
I haven't.
Okay.
In fact, for years, I did high school football for years.
Okay.
For 20 years, and it never crossed over. I never announced anything about the funeral home, and at the funeral home, I never talked about the broadcasting. I never crossed them over. I kept them totally separate. And because this was my getaway, because of the pressures and the stress that I had in my profession,
absolutely,
getting out and being able to do a ball game and getting into it and yelling and hollering, those 2-3 hours was like a huge diversion for me. And I could just leave everything back at the office, all of the problems that were there, the tragedies and everything that I was dealing with. I could leave that, and for 2-3 hours I could be involved with this ball game, and it was a tremendous release for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I jumped into it. I had no training. Basically, I started listening to broadcasters, and I tried to pick up something from this one or something from that one, and what to do, what to say, how to say it, and things like that. And so it basically just kind of self-taught, or kind of just jumped in and tried to learn how to swim real fast.
Yeah, it's quite the escape that you have there, and I think for a lot of people, that's what turns their hobbies more into passion, is if they can find a way to just release all the emotions into something that they, not only enjoy, but they happen to be good at, and you happen to be very good at what you do. Every sportscaster I know, except for myself, and I'm working on it, has a catchphrase or their line. For Joe Stacy, it's "he means business." For JR of WWE, if you ever watched pro wrestling back in the 90s, it was my God, he's broken in half, or a slobber knocker. And for you,
oh yeah.
For you, though, it's rather specific. It is, "Oh, help me, Hannah." Where does that come from for you?
Well, actually, it's "Holy help me, Hannah."
Holy help me,
and
Hannah.
Yeah, and it was a phrase that I invented as I was mowing the lawn, and I was thinking about what can I say, and I said, well, "Holy cow" has been used for decades. You can't use that.
Yeah.
And you can't say "holy" on the air. So you needed to come up with something else, and I thought, well, holy help me. And it was like, well, Hazel, well, that doesn't fit. That isn't a good name. And I came up with "Holy help me, Hannah." And it just seemed to fit. And I used that, and I've been using that as a phrase for probably 25 years or better, and actually had it trademarked. And it had officially trademarked, and it was my copyright on it. And not that it was ever used or tampered with or whatever. I just got it because I thought it would be kind of fun to be able to say it was copyrighted. And I had it that way, and I've used it. And it's people have kind of enjoyed hearing it because they knew that was a tremendously important play. I don't use it that often. I used to use it more, and it just kind of got overdone. So I don't use it very often. It has to be something spectacular, and I don't decide to use it. It just comes out because the play just warranted it. Wow. And it's just an exclamation point on the play, and it falls into place when it's the right call.
Yeah, it has been a great phrase, and it's crazy to think that is how it all came about, because Joe Stacy's "He Means Business" was actually inspired by his father, because he means business, and that was a phrase that went around the house when he was always in trouble as a kid, which thankfully wasn't a lot. But do you know Mauro Ronaldo?
No, I do not. I'm sorry to
It's okay. So he is, in my world anyway, so he is the play-by-play guy for WWE NXT, which is their developmental, which is kind of what the IFL is in the world of football. But he also does Showtime boxing and a lot of sports, hand-to-hand combat and wrestling of that nature. And he is had a documentary series done on him, the bipolar rock and roller, because he has bipolar, and he is an advocate for mental illness. But his style and yours are very similar, and that is that there are plays that may not be the most exciting that you happen to be able to make sound incredibly exciting. And not only that, but when you call a game, you call both ways. When I noticed the Nebraska game, you called that Tommy Armstrong fake handoff as if it was one of your own, as if it was a Sioux Falls touchdown. And I got to say, I really appreciate that from you, because when we watch on YouTube, we only get one side or the other for the broadcast team. There's not a neutral team that they send out to these games to call this. And so sometimes it's just a downer to watch a game that you have no dog in the fight, and the announcers will call the away teams, or the opponent's calls and plays as if it's just the most depressing, sad thing that they've ever seen happen on the football field. So I really appreciate you for being, I don't know if it's unbiased or what you would call it for your style, calling both teams, but you certainly do it very well.
I've always felt, Richard, that a good play deserves a good call, regardless of who makes it.
Yes.
And I have a real problem with fans unappreciating the opponent just because they're the other opponent. And they do.
Yeah.
The other team comes out, boo, whatever. That's lousy. That's absolutely lousy. You should cheer them for showing up, because if they don't show up, there's no game.
Yep.
So you're happy that they're there. And I appreciate a good athletic play, and I will call it that way. And I have done that my entire career because I felt it's an exciting part of the game. The opponent scoring makes a score closer, or they're getting the lead bigger. It's an exciting game. That's important. That's a part of it. And that's why I try to call the game straight. I try never to say I, we, or us, or them, because that's not what my job is. My job is to tell the folks at home about this game that's going on in the best way that I can. Tell them who has the ball, where it is on the field, what the score is, what time is there, and then try to put some other information out that will be entertaining or informative. And then when the play happens, put as much emphasis into it as the play exhibits on the field. If it's a gain for 2 yards and I go over the top and say, holy help me, Anna, that's not a good call. You call it as the incitement of the play itself. If it was a fourth down, a foot to go, game on the line, seconds remaining, you're at the goal line, they get 1 yard, it's a whole different call, because it's the importance of it in retrospect to the entire game. So that's what I try to do, and that's what, I guess, when I listen to a broadcast, I really have a problem with guys that are just totally us and we and them, and complaining about the officials, complaining about the calls, complaining about everything else. That's not professional broadcasting in my mind. That's just a homer that happened to get lucky enough to be given a microphone.
That's very, very true. Well, your work and your feelings on the matter, displayed as such on the microphone, do not go unnoticed or unappreciated, for that matter. But 40 years. This is a career. This is something that does not have an age out, where you're calling something that definitely does. And in the IFL, you can usually have a little bit longer of a career than maybe in most sports. But for a person to do anything for 40 years is an accomplishment in itself. And you've already had your fair share of moments, and we're only in week 3. It was game 2 for the Sioux Falls Storm, but there was the Bergner 54-yard field goal, and that one was my part of my new segment, weekly segment of the Kickers Need Love 2 moment of the week. And the previous two, I went ahead and I voiced over because I didn't feel like the call was worthy of the kick that had happened or the special teams play that had happened, but I didn't voice over yours because you called it, in my mind, perfect for that kind of moment there. 54 yards by Bergner, and then, of course, Lorenzo Brown, 100 career touchdowns now. What's it been like to look back knowing that your voice is associated with so many incredible moments, not only for the Sioux Falls Storm, but for the IFL in general?
Well, I thank you very much for those kind words. It means more to me, Richard, than you realize. The thing about being in broadcasting, especially radio, you're sitting in kind of a corner of a building by yourself, hooked up to a bunch of wires, talking to yourself for 3 hours. And most people that are in that situation have to be taken back to the home after the 3 hours is up. Because you're sitting there talking to yourself. You have no interaction with anybody else. So it is always just a treat for me to find out or hear from anybody that's listened. And because I know there's a lot of people out there, but I hear from very little of them, unless I make a mistake. Then I'll hear from them. But I really appreciate those words because to know that people are listening and appreciating what I'm doing. And the thing about it is that I think a broadcaster has to look at it this way because you are telling this story to a blind person.
Yeah.
Because they cannot see what's going on. So you have to be their eyes for them and, to be their excitement. So that's what over the years that I've tried to do in the broadcasts. And, sometimes I don't get it right. And sometimes my tongue gets all tied up, and sometimes I don't see the numbers right, or sometimes just things don't go right. I feel terrible about that, but you just have to continue going because this is live radio. There's no fixing it. You just have to keep on going.
That's very true. As Vince McMahon would say, if it's live, nothing can go wrong, and I think that you've certainly treated your profession that way. 40 years going into it, since clearly you had the path not normally traveled to get to the destination of sportscasting, but did you have a favorite play going into it, and do you have a favorite play of your own looking back on 40 years in the booth?
Well, to back up just a little bit, you talk about Vince McMahon and the WWE. I also did announcing for professional wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So that goes back many, many years. And the guys that were working in this area at the time, when I was calling that, Cowboy Scott Casey out of Texas and Bob Sweetan out of Texas. And we had a lot of guys that matriculated through here. Buzz Sawyer was up here working. And so I had a little history in that, too. It was an interesting part, and that was also just kind of a sidelight as far as the things that I've done. As far as a favorite call, I would have to believe that one of my favorite calls happened in Sioux Falls when the Sioux Falls Storm were playing the Lexington Horsemen for the UIF title. And there was a call that we were getting ready to line up. It was a field goal that was being kicked, and in the old Sioux Falls arena, the broadcast booth that I was in was directly above the end zone towards the right side of the end zone, not in the center, but to the right. And I'm looking right down the field. And the kick is kicked, and I'm calling it. As it's coming towards the goalpost, it is hooking drastically. In fact, it's coming right at us. And it is coming right at about head high. And I'm calling it pretty much as this is happening. And the ball gets up there, and I catch it. The computer gets knocked off. My headset gets knocked off to the side. But I hang on to the football, and I never stop talking. That's probably my favorite call.
Wow, that's right up there with "Do You Believe in Miracles?" Yes.
Well, it kind of reminds me of the bit that they had on the old TV show WKRP in Cincinnati. If you've ever seen that clip of Les Nessman talking about they had the free turkey giveaway, It was they jumped him or dropped him out of a helicopter.
Oh, I
And
do remember. Yes, yeah.
yes, and Mr. Carlson saying, "As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly." You know, but for me to talk about this football coming at us, that's probably one of my favorite calls, um, and I've had a lot of fun at different times. But I think the thing about it is that I look back at a game. A lot of times I don't remember anything that I said. Sometimes even people ask me, "What was the score?" And I'm not sure. I got to look it up because you're so involved with doing it and writing it and getting it right that you forget some of those details. So I'm the worst person to ask about a ball game after it's over because I don't always remember it. But I listened back on it and I found some old tapes from many years ago, and I happened to find them. I wanted to put together kind of a special collage for somebody that was working with me in the broadcast booth, and it was great to hear some of those things from way back when and how things have changed or progressed. I think one of the biggest things over the 40 years, Richard, that have changed is the technology. Literally, when I did games in high school 40 years ago, we did it by telephone line. So you had a telephone plug-in, and you had a desk phone, not a Comrex or anything like that. You had a desk phone that had a special switch on it that you plugged that in, and you plugged it in. You had kind of a mixer there of some sorts, and that's how you did the broadcast. I remember sitting in the bleachers one time with a wire coming down from the telephone pole behind me into the top row of the bleachers, and that's how I plugged in and be able to do the broadcast.
Wow.
And then it started to rain. And you're sitting there hooked up to somewhat like electricity because you got the mixer and that and trying to do this broadcast and people sitting around you. The different things like that are the things that I remember more than practically all of the games. I remember doing a broadcast one time, and they said, "Now make sure that you never don't touch that switch there." So I make sure that I don't touch the switch on this desk phone, and I'm sitting in the bleachers, and I nudge it, and it kind of goes over the seat that it was just sitting there in the bleachers, and I catch it, but I can't quite bring it back, and I'm at a break right now, and all of a sudden I got this phone hanging there, so I get my foot up there, and I try to bring it back, and I finally get it, and I bring it too far. And it falls down between the bleachers, between the seats, between the footrest, and all I could grab was the handheld handset. And here I am coming back from break, and now back to Rich at the gymnasium. And here I'm standing there holding this headphone. The phone is yo-yoing down beneath me, but I'm still on the air, and we just keep going.
Wow. It's just incredible. The stories that you must have, which I'm sure that, and I'm thinking about it right now, you and I are we could talk for hours. We really could, but I know that you're incredibly busy man, and I don't want to take up too much of your time this first go around. You are definitely more than welcome back because there is so much to talk about, and of course, I'm sure it's probably easy making the calls for a team as successful as the Sioux Falls Storm, and I'm sure that the feeling's mutual, and they're very happy to have you be the voice of so many great moments throughout the history of that franchise. And I saw that there was a intern opportunity for what I imagine is working alongside you there. And when I first saw that, I immediately messaged Kaylee to ask the details and if it was a paid internship, which she said no. And if Sioux Falls was even 6 hours drive from here, it probably wouldn't have mattered to me for an opportunity like that. But I'm sure that whoever it is that you guys end up getting for that is going to be a great fit and somebody that will be groomed perfectly to the Sioux Falls standard out there in South Dakota.
Well, I tell you, over the years, I've had 3 interns that have worked with me. One is full-time in radio here in Sioux Falls, does play-by-play. And a second works for South Dakota Public Broadcasting, and he won an Emmy, literally a big-time Emmy, for a production that he had done since he's been working at that job. And a third intern, a young lady, now she is one of the main persons in the regional sports television station. So I've had great opportunities to work with people that have blossomed and just gone on to having great careers, and that has been just a joy for me to be a part of what their growth has been, because they all started out and, I handed them a microphone and their mouth opened and nothing came out and their eyes got real big. And now I look at them and what they've accomplished and what they've done. And that's just been a great joy for me. And it's been a great ride to be a part of broadcasting with the Sioux Falls Storm. Traveled all over the country with them and met a lot of people. And one of the things, when this league first started 20 years ago, there wasn't the technology that there is now as far as coverage and streaming and things like that. Streaming was at its infancy, and many teams didn't have radio. So I was the only voice out there for quite a while.
Oh, wow.
So that's why, when people would listen, that's who they got, was me. So that's why I tried to always also, make it a good broadcast for everybody. And it was really kind of neat because there was no video, there was no streaming like on YouTube like there is now. It was just radio, and I was the only voice out there, and I enjoyed it immensely, and made a lot of friends because of it.
Yeah, well, we're certainly happy to have had you, and I know that even though my tenure has not been long compared to 40 years, I have enjoyed this sport, this league, so much, meeting people such as yourself, especially someone who, it's kind of a smaller, more elite group as far as friends that you have that are sportscasters as well. And I'm on my own path with the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting and whatever opportunities present themselves, but continue to do what you do to the very best. Hopefully another 40 ahead of you, but as long as you can do it the Rich Roste way, please, by all means. It's a pleasure to be able to hear you on a lot of the calls for the Indoor Football League.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. And just as a little piece of advice as you go out there, I tell this to groups when I speak to them, and I stand up, and many of them are sports groups, and I'll say to them, I look out here and I see people that are quitters. And then I kind of pause, and then I say, also look out here and I see people that are not lucky. And then throughout the course of the presentation, I tell them this. I said, as far as being a quitter, what was your first job? Paper boy, working at McDonald's, whatever? I said, do you still do that? No, you quit that to go on to something, do it, and doing it better. And the same thing is true in your life and in your profession. As you go through it, you learn, you change, you grow, and you quit doing the things that aren't good and you start doing the things that are good. They're going to make a difference. And the second thing is people are not lucky. When they get an opportunity or when they get a position or they get hired, it's because they were prepared for the opportunity when it happened. So as you go through your career, you're doing it right now. You're getting prepared. You're doing the things necessary to learn so that when you get to that opportunity, when that opportunity comes, you're going to be prepared for it and be able to walk in the door and say, yes, I can do this job for you. And I wish you all the best. I know that you have a very, very bright future ahead of you. And I look forward to watching you as you grow and progress in this great profession of sportscasting.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. It's an honor to have words like that from someone like you, and I definitely hope that you keep doing it long enough so that I can see you on the road out there in the IFL somewhere as we pass by or sit in our respective booths, maybe even someday somehow call a game together, which would be an honor and a privilege. But he is the voice of the Sioux Falls Storm, the Silver Fox, Rich Roste, celebrating 40 years in the broadcast booth, and a great start already to the 2019 season. Year number 40. Thank you so very much for your time. It's truly been an honor.
Well, thank you very much, Richard. I'm just Rich. I'm just me. I'm no big deal, but I appreciate you talking to me and talking about these different things, and look forward to meeting you down the road. We'll see each other sometime, and also love to be on your show again and talk things over or help you out in any way that I can.
Absolutely. We will make that happen. Until then, you take care of yourself, and thank you again. You have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you very much, Richard.
All right. Bye. And once again, thank you to Rich Roste of the Sioux Falls Storm. Great conversation. And, we could talk for hours. We really could. And I think we'll probably end up having him on again throughout the season just because he is a well of knowledge in the sport and the teams. And we didn't really even talk a whole lot about the Storm, but it was a career weekend for Lorenzo Brown, 100 career touchdowns. Congratulations to him. Miles Bergner with that 54-yarder. So a great week to have Rich Roste on the program, and so honored to be graced by his presence. I'm sure he hates all the praise and everything, but he's well deserving of it. So that will do it for our Tuesday edition of the Fan Show. Don't forget to tune in again tomorrow night. We welcome another special guest. It's the middle of the week. We might have a little bit of fun. And then Thursday, of course, our preview day, as we will look ahead to the next week in the IFL and the AAF, plus a look ahead at everything coming up for the rest of the month of March and maybe some things happening in April. 2019 is off and rolling. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget it's not official unless it's Fan Show official. And best of luck to you and yours. Go Niners, and it's all fun and games until you butt fumble. Good night, folks.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez ran into his own player's butt? That was funny sports.
Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the Fan Show.